Welcome to CISO Interviews, where Affinia hosts cybersecurity executives sharing career advice, actionable insights, and tips so that you can enhance your career and succeed as well.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. As we start, can you say a few words about your current role and the organization?
Sure. I'm currently the Information Security Officer for the University of Southern California's Shoah Foundation and also their entire library system. So with that, we are securing archival copies of the research and the holograms that are used to deliver that research to the researchers. And then also we catalog and safeguard all of the Holocaust testimonials and genocide testimonials for every genocide that has occurred since the Holocaust. So it's pretty rewarding, but as you can imagine, it's quite a task to keep all of that where it's supposed to be and make sure that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands.
I understand. And how big is the team?
I have 2 at the moment, but we are expanding. We typically utilize shared resources because we have about 65 federated identities within USC. So there's a centralized IT department that we can pick and pull from for whatever we need. And essentially, I only keep people close to me that are specifically related to compliance because we have different flavors of compliance than the other identities. So we're not necessarily having a pool of people to pull for compliance.
I understand. So that kind of paints the picture of where you are and the career trajectory, but how did you get started in cybersecurity? What was the first door you knocked on? So
I went to DeVry, which is, where the poor kids go that can't afford to go anywhere else really. And, there's no hoops to jump through to get there. So I came out of Mormon country and I'd like to say it was a good place to escape from, and went to DeVry and said, hey, what can I do? And they said, this will pay the most. And it was computer information systems. They were a little dismayed to find out that I had never touched a computer in 1993 when I signed up for that. But, literally I couldn't go back home and sleep on my mom's couch. So I did what they told me to do, and they walked me into a job at a data processing firm within about 3 months of me starting at school. So I was doing assembler coding, COBOL and JCL, all that fun stuff. And quickly realized that I was not cut out for data processing, even though I was pretty good at being technical, but I was not good at assembler or cleaning up other people's assembly code. And so I, had my eye on a few other people that looked like they were having a joyful day instead of, what I was experiencing, which was a struggle. So I went over to being an Oracle DBA for a while, and then I saw all these happy program and project managers and thought, oh, I think that would be better for me. And, made a little, it was kind of like a lateral zigzag over to that, got some more training. And I actually found that was really good for me, having enough technical exposure to interact with infrastructure and with the programmers and being able to speak their language and more so being deferential to their expertise, I think served me well. And with that, I was able to really get my hands on a lot of different areas, and one of them being risk and compliance. It was more of an emergency style, like, hey, our compliance manager has left 3 times and now we have to get our PCI audit done. What do we do, right? We call program management and say, hey, come bail us out. So I essentially had to put on the hat of the program manager and the compliance officer to get it done. And in that, a colleague of mine said, hey, you're better than this. You should come over to security. And I laughed it off because she always looked like she was running around with her head cut off. And I didn't really want anything to do with that, right? Because in program management, you can already see the fires and you're just enough away from it to, organize the fire drill and throw some resources at it, but you're not ultimately responsible for all that drama. And so I just, chalked it up to that's not something I wanted to do. But it didn't stop me from cracking open a CISSP book and trying to figure out, could I do this? So I would say that was around 2013 is when I was really trying to think about, could I do this? Do I have what it takes, or is it going to be like data processing? What I found was, you really could dive into that for many, many years and still not know very much. And that intrigued me. It made me think, I'm not going to get bored here. There's always going to be something to do. And the more I learn, the more valuable I'll be, versus like if you're a program manager, you're kind of a one-trick pony and people chalk you up to, oh, you can only do administrivia. And I don't like feeling pigeonholed. So I gradually, just started learning more and doing more and accepting roles that had a little bit of a scariness to it. And I think that was the difference, right? Coming in laterally from program management and having seen things and being able to speak, but then just taking that growth mindset and really going after learning security and trying to, I think the biggest thing was learning how to go toe to toe with the infrastructure guys, because if you can't win them over and you can't speak with them and you can't work with them, you're never going to be able to fill the needs of the business. And that's where I was able to kind of marry up the two skill sets and make it work for me.
Interesting. And it seems like you have experiences of organizations of various industries and various company sizes. I saw in your LinkedIn profile and CR Intuit. I wonder from all these different experiences, you have a very good vantage point to give advice for someone who's just starting on this journey, who maybe trying to switch from technology to cybersecurity, or maybe is still kind of in school, figuring out what to do with their lives. From your experience, what would be your advice to them? What are the 2-3 things you think they should focus on to set them up for success?
Absolutely. So, in my 15 minutes of free time, I mentor about 190 cyber hopefuls who are moving over from other careers to cyber, and most of them are going after an analyst position because that's the best place to come in if you're not super technical. So that I tell them, and that I tell everybody else that I run into who tells me that they're unhappy with their job, from bartenders to hotel people, whoever I find in my travels, I always try to recruit them, because honestly, we all know we need people, right? And we need them to get started on that now. So I'm just looking at my cheat sheet here. So for me, it's people need to look at the long game, right? It's a long game. It's not, we're gonna overnight take a class on Udemy and I'm gonna be a security expert that someone's gonna hire immediately, right? They need to see that you have invested time and some money in getting some of those certs and really educating yourself and doing the lab exercises like on IT Pro TV, or pick any of those, Cybrary, pick one and really go down one of those career paths and do all the things, right? And then the certs are a big deal, right? Especially when you're new. It's not just about having a degree, because people know that if you spent 4 years on a degree, your skills probably got pretty rusty in that time while you're taking all your gen ed classes, and you really need to be able to prove that out in some way. So if you don't have the experience, you've got to have a cert from a objective third party that says this person knows something. And even if you memorized it, you still know more than somebody who probably came out of a 4-year degree with a minor in security or something like that. So much.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I tell people, don't become a one-trick pony, right? Don't learn one thing and one thing only. You wanna be, trying to get to that CISP point where it's a mile wide and 2 feet deep. So that you can then go down certain paths and figure out which one are you gonna be good at, which one are you gonna be interested in? Because if you're not interested in it, you're not gonna be very good at it. And so you have to try and test and see which one is gonna be good for you.
It makes sense, because it's by what I'm hearing a lot is everything is moving so fast that you have to be curious for a long time, and you have to be in it for a long time, as you said, to play the long game, because it's so easy to burn out. And to your point, if you're in a 4-year college degree, the world is going 100 miles an hour. By the time you're done, what you learn in year 1 is going to be not that relevant probably by the end of year 4. So it makes a lot of sense. But you mentioned mentoring. What would be some of the venues for people either looking to switch careers or maybe some of the junior professionals? Where would you recommend they look for a mentor?
So what I like to recommend is, pretty much your teacher is going to be the first mentor you have. And listening to them and asking them for advice, and even asking, it's okay to ask your teacher, hey, would you mind introducing me to someone in either the field I'm interested in, or someone who just took this path and has traversed all these, hoops of fire. Those are the best people, right? People who have clawed their way and, have not had a lot of help. And so I have those people that I reach out to when I have a promising person. But you also need to make sure that you are a star, right? Because your teacher or your mentor is not going to refer you to somebody else if they don't think that you're going to make them look good, right? It's going to look like a waste of time to somebody who is really, carving out a special piece of their life for you. And so take it take it as an important thing and make sure that you understand that that person's going out on a limb for you. And, you know, putting their reputation on the line. So it's really important to come correctly and do the work. That's the biggest thing, right? Do the work. I still to this day, I can't tell if you can see how many books I have back there, but you know, I'm on my 4th attempt of CISSP because I wasn't taking it seriously the first couple times, and I thought, oh, I passed every exam for my SOCA, I should be able to do this one, no problem. Well, I couldn't have been more wrong, right? ISC Spray will do their best to make sure that you earn it. You know, you're not going to just get it easy, and that goes the same for many of the other ones. You've got to have the combination of the experience and the know-how to be able to answer the questions correctly because they mimic real life. So they're doing their best to set you up for success and make sure that you don't go in writing as, you know, a cert and you don't know what you're doing. So, you know, circling back to making sure that you're coming correctly, that's what it's about. And really it's about staying the course. And then the last thing I would tell people is, as soon as you possibly can, you need to start teaching what you know, because you don't truly know it until you can teach someone else. So I tell people, go and talk cyber to anyone that will listen, because the more you explain and the more questions they ask you, the better you're going to get at delivering what you do and why you do and why it's important. And that is, you know, that's the #1 skill that we're here to deliver. We're here to educate and inform and make sure that people understand what we're trying to do, because otherwise it's going to be like the old days, right? Where they hear compliance or risk or security and they all run away because they think that you're coming for them. But it's really changed, and it's really not about that now. So those would be my recommendations for newbies and for people who are in the middle, who are trying to figure out how do they get to where we're at. And I mean, quite frankly, we really need more people who are able to traverse that big gap there, because we've got a lot of new people coming in, and we've got a lot of people who are, you know, seasoned veterans who are, you know, in that top 5 to 10%, but we have a huge gap in the middle where we need senior people. So be brave and do the work.
It certainly makes a lot of sense. And to your point, when you start teaching someone, or just explaining what you do, and it certainly, you organize your thoughts, you organize the material in a much better way. And it doesn't mean outside of the organization, because I think a lot of people within the organization, they have very little idea of what CISOs or what the cybersecurity department does. I mean, probably conceptually, they understand that, yes, the job is to protect infrastructure and data assets and stop the phishing attacks and ransomware conceptually, but exactly what day-to-day job looks like and how much effort is going into making sure that the organization is running smoothly, I think it's often, unfortunately, lost on a lot of people who are in, you know, HR, sales, or marketing, or kind of logistics, et cetera, et cetera. So even teaching someone who's your colleague or peer would probably go a long way to help yourself kind of organize everything, all the material that you have, and what you're learning. Switching gears a little bit, I know, well, the world has changed since the day of COBOL and all the other languages. Again, certainly takes me back a few years, just thinking about it, that you mentioned. And it seems during these years, technology in general is playing such a much bigger role in everyone's lives, on a personal level, at a family level, organizational level, all the way to, I know, countries and whatnot. And I think as a result, the surface area for malicious actors has increased so much. So what in the past, with something that felt like a nuisance, now it's almost an existential threat. Right now, from what you said, what are the top 2, 3 cybersecurity problems that you think everyone is thinking about, that probably top of mind for everyone? If you were to rank them, what will be the 3 on top?
I think everything stems from having executive teams and boards who are less informed than they should be in this area. You know, they generally look at risk management, and they have a risk management person, you know, even if it's a director of finance or, you know, whoever that top line person is who owns risk. But I recently took a class on, you know, just becoming a qualified technology executive on a board, or to help a board grow that expertise, because right now there are all kinds of stats from published studies that show that boards who do not have one seasoned security person or even a trained security person on that board are suffering the most breaches. And it's something like, I want to say 35 or 40% higher likelihood of having a breach that had a significant impact on the business in terms of downtime or lost revenue or lost customers or reputational impact. Any of those things are attributed to that. So that concerns me quite a lot, right? Everyone talks about Biden's executive order to increase cybersecurity awareness and hold boards accountable. But we're still seeing a really slow move to action essentially in that area. And so I think it's on us, right? It's on us to push up to let them know that that's something that should be happening, and also to provide information willingly and in a format that they can consume. And that's a big problem, right? We're used to making all these reports with all this detail, and they don't want that. They want, tell me why I care about this. Tell me why I should care about this. And unfortunately, it falls on deaf ears when it's, not the right message. So I think that contributes to it. And then the next thing, which is really close behind it to me, is I see a lot of pressure in small to mid-sized companies to create what I call security theater, because of budget cuts or because of just a lack of appreciation for something that needs to get done. It's too expensive. It's not the right fit for us. It's, whatever it is. But from a security practitioner perspective, a lot of us are feeling that because we advise and we recommend and we point to frameworks and we show a nice picture, but then it gets picked and pulled apart, and we're being forced to sign off on things that are not necessarily a complete baseline security package, or it's not a layered approach. It's more of like, hey, we did a thing over here and that should be enough. And we know that that's not accurate, and our people, even more importantly, get very dismayed when they know what should be happening. And then we're telling them, oh, sorry, we can't do that because of X, Y, Z. So that always gives me pause, because I don't like to have to be a hypocrite with my team when I tell them, do what's right and make recommendations and, be proactive and look for problems. And then when it's met with, we can't, or they don't agree, right? We have internal conflict that takes away from the focus of not only delivering organizational value, but it will impact revenue, it will impact customer satisfaction. All these things that we're here to serve the business on are going to be impacted. And then I think, the obvious thing is the increased pressure from hiring delays and freezes and just people being burnt out and, essentially running away from their current role to something that seems like it's going to be better. Or I've had a few people tell me, it's different people, different day, same issues, but at least having your brain wrapped around something new is going to be better than something that you've been toiling over, or perhaps being forced to do security theater, or you just can't get your budget that you want and you're just stuck in maintenance mode. Like, a lot of us are really good at chaos remediation and jumping into the fire and handling the fires, right? Any of us that have been through multiple breaches, we kind of start to get used to that, and we like that action. And as soon as we go to maintenance mode with no money and there's nothing to do, guess what? Those smart people are not going to be busy. They're going to be bored and they're going to leave. So I think it starts to come back to us in terms of, like, how do we keep them engaged? How do we keep them motivated? How do we give them the right mix of work to do, even though we have these constraints, so they don't feel like their expertise is just wilting and withering away. And I see a lot of that these days. Just post-COVID, people are just either trying to question, what am I doing here? Is this the right thing for me to do? And then when people leave and they don't get their positions replaced, they then accumulate work from other people that is triple or double, boring on top of work, because they can't do the work that they want to do. So those would be my three.
Certainly. Well, it makes a lot of sense. It's and kind of to double click on the second point that you mentioned, depending on the size of the company, signing off on something that in your heart is incomplete or incorrect or inconsistent, not only it's just sets up the organization for kind of problems down the line. Oftentimes, depending on the organization size, it creates a personal liability for the cybersecurity executive, as there was kind of a lot of awareness in the community about fairly recent action that was brought by SEC against some of the CISOs of fairly large companies. There were companies being charged or investigated. I think the most recent one was in Las Vegas. Some of the casino organizations, the fairly heavy-handed legal action and investigation that's brought against them. So when someone says, "I'm accepting the risk," I just often gives me a pause, because I'm not 100% sure that everyone involved understands the level of risk they're actually taking, and what the personal implications, potential personal liability for cybersecurity executives involved would look like down the line. So it's certainly something that's kind of new and evolving. And on the second one, this burnout and this work stress, it's certainly present. I recently saw stats, I think from Ian's research, that some staggering number of cybersecurity executives are considering a career change. So it seems like it's always a struggle to get to the top, but it seems like people at the top are often not particularly happy, or so stressed and so burned out that they're looking to do something else, either go into consulting or VCISO or teaching or VC, kind of the venture route. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely found that there's a big, let me back up for a second. So we all have this, pie in the sky dream of becoming that top 5% of CISO or CIO or whatever it is, right? But what you don't realize is when you get to, the title of CISO or VP of whatever / CISO, you don't realize that there are 18 levels of CISO capability and pay and bonus structure and all this stuff, right? So you're always treading water and trying to get ahead, but it's very difficult to grow your career while you're working crazy hours, crazy environment, dealing with breaches, right? It's no different than what other people do, but we have that added, sense of urgency and sense of strife. I think that really, it just chips away at morale and chips away at your ability to cope. And so if you don't have coping strategies, or you have bad coping strategies, right? Like I had an alcohol problem once, and I've successfully kicked it for a few years now, but I saw myself going off a cliff there where I was using alcohol as my coping mechanism. And ever since I've opened up about that, I've had many CISOs come to me and say, wow, I'm having the same thing. What did you do? So I found that it's very healing to talk about it, because we're all going through the same thing and people are handling it differently. But if you don't get a handle on that, it will eat you alive. And I think many have suffered that, right? It's either eaten into their family, or it's eaten into their physical well-being, whatever it is. I do encourage people all the time, right? Level set with yourself and figure out, are you, going off in a way that is not going to be healthy for you in 6 months, 9 months, whatever it is. Because if it is, you really do need to go back to your fallback skills and figure out, what can I do right now that's going to make me decent money, but also allow me to regain that sense of self and life and all the things that you need to be whole. Because if you're not right personally, you're not going to be right at work. And personally, I really want to climb to the top, but I'm not willing to sacrifice all the other things in my life that I've worked so hard to do to, make more money. It's not going to be worth it,
For sure. But it's kind of interesting. So it's not always obvious. People don't always get this realization while climbing. It's only sometimes once you get to that top of the mountain, then you can see what it looks like. And it's a little bit of the expectation is not always kind of met with the reality once you realize that that job comes with a lot of stress and a lot of responsibilities, and really it often feels like life is coming at you at 100 miles an hour and you're running in 3 different directions at any given point in time, and it's just it's a bit much. So obviously kind of the trade-offs involved along the way, but it's interesting how people not realizing that while climbing, but only realizing once they get to a certain spot. Kessa,
I just wanted to add one more thing. I was going to say, I tell my students too, maybe as a 4th thing, right? When you're starting out in this business, you need to get a grip on your coping mechanisms, right? This is the time. Grow those solid, healthy coping mechanisms. And, if you feel like you're already developing something, go get some therapy, right? It's the right time. It's the right way. And then as you grow, you're growing your own capabilities as you move with awareness and mindfulness, and you can take care of yourself a lot better.
For sure. Well, I think it's worth another hour of a conversation of how family and friends and activities outside of work and nutrition and things and exercise comes into this, but it's probably for another time. Because this is a very interesting perspective. As we're switching gears a little bit, if you had a crystal ball and let's say if a crystal ball and you can see into the future, 12 months from now, cybersecurity executives will be thinking about, excited about, concerned about what 2-3 things you think?
I think we're still gonna see this struggle between nations in terms of us catching up to, say, a Russia or China or North Korea. There were entire segments of conferences dedicated towards informing us about all the inner workings of these nation state attackers. And so I think, that's the stuff that wakes me up, right? How does that impact me whenever I see a breach notice or something shows up on my SOC radar? Because we start to get so far removed from things that we forget that we're in the food chain, right? Anything that happens above or around us is going to impact us at some point. And so I think it's just that realizing where we're at in the food chain and figuring out how do I protect myself ahead of time versus turning a blind eye to it and saying, well, I'm not in oil and gas. I don't care about that, or I'm not in infrastructure. What they don't realize is, eventually if we lose power or we lose critical functions, we're pretty much dead in the water. So that's one of the ones for me. And I think we're always going to have the hiring issues unless we substantially change our educational paradigm when it comes to cyber, because we're still piggybacking off old IT ways, which, they took a long time to develop skill sets and a labor force in IT. It was almost 20 years to reach a point where we had enough people to do the work. And so we're still on that curve, but we're not doing it very effectively. We're using old school ways to train people, and I think we need to flip more to like a trade approach to get enough people in here. And each one needs to teach one, right? Each one of us needs to take at least one person by the hand and bring them up, or we're going to continue to have this issue where I'm doing 3 people's jobs because I'm not going to be able to hire people that are at the price that I can pay. It's this price war right now with, a security engineer, probably 250,000 US. And for a small to mid-sized company, that's not happening, right? So security suffers. So we're going to continue to see this kind of stuff. And I think in general, knowledge sharing amongst us is a big deal, right? So that's where this comes in. I'm so head down all the time that half the time I find out about something after it happened, well after we're well into vulnerability remediation, and I'm like, whoa, when did this happen? So if we're not making time or have the availability to sit down with other practitioners, we don't always cross-pollinate in a way that helps us do our job better. We just continue in our same way, and we're trying to figure out why we can't solve this problem. Or why do I keep having an issue with my identity management vendor, right? I want to know, does this vendor have continuous issues that other people are experiencing? And I probably would not renew with them, right? Or just these kinds of things. I think being able to cross-pollinate is a big one, and making sure that happens, because when it doesn't, then we all suffer.
For sure. And to kind of double click on that, I know we're coming up on time. Because I know you're probably a member of various communities and meetups and organizations for cybersecurity executives. On that last note, what can Affinia do better or differently to provide more value for members?
Well, I went back and was looking at my interactions with the group today, and I realized that I really love the free forever mindset, because being able to be in it's kind of like a coexisting environment where it's not pay for play. It's more like, hey, we're each giving something to get something. I really like that. Whereas some of the other ones, it's so much money to join something or to participate that it really becomes a barrier to entry, and you're back where you started again, right? Or you're like, am I going to get out of this what I really think I'm going to get for the time and the money? I also like that you're in the mix, right? You're there day to day, whereas a lot of people will hand it off, and then you're talking to a random marketing person about security stuff, and you're like, this is not working, right? I'm repeating myself a lot, but you also don't get the flavor of caring about the organization when the person disappears. So I appreciate always that you're reaching out to me and that you're talking to me. That makes a big difference to me. And I think it also shows our community that you care. And then, as always, I really would never meet a lot of these people that I'm talking to, because I'm head down and they're head down, right? Or stuck between travel and conferences and trying to get a day off here and there. So just having something that is always working behind the scenes where I can reach out and say, hey, I have a question, or there'll be a webinar pops up and I'm like, hey, that's very timely because I have a question about that. So I don't know if I have great suggestions for improvement other than, you know, we just want to continue to grow our group and make sure that we get as much reach as possible. And then, you know, with that, I think organically it'll grow into something amazing, you know, more amazing than what it is now. And, you know, we'll just keep each participating and doing what we're supposed to do, and it'll be great.
Well, thank you so much. You made my day. You really, you really did. This is best feedback I could possibly ask for. Cass, where can people follow you? Where can they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. It's Cassandra Mack in Las Vegas. I'm also available at CassandraMackCISO@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.